All right. Well, welcome Softwave University. It's really a pleasure today to have with us Dr. Johannes Holfeld, who's a cardiac thoracic surgeon, full-time, but also you are a full-time researcher as well. And really excited to have you on this. We've been working since really November to get you on. So super excited. Thanks for taking time out of your busy schedule, sir.
Thank you, Matt. It's my pleasure to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
You know, I loved when your team was presenting in Vienna this past November 2021. You guys, I believe, won 4 of the awards, of the 6 awards. You have a wonderful team around you. Can you give a little history? Like, you've been in shockwave sector for 14, 15 years now?
Yes, it's about 15 years, and then it happened to me that I really started as being a med student myself at this time. I had the chance to try shockwaves on infarcted hearts in rats, and I saw amazing effects. And when I attended my first meetings, I obviously visited all those basic research sessions, and I saw the results of the major stem cell and cell therapy guys, the really big names from the large universities, and I was watching them, listening, and thought, wow, they have impressive effects, but mine are even better. And although I wasn't able at that time to clearly show the working mechanism, to clearly define what is going on after a shockwave, I knew that my effects are better than everything that was known at this time. This was in the beginning of the 2000s. And this really was what kept me going all those years, because I knew that what I have got in my hands just by chance is something spectacular that may be able to change regenerative medicine worldwide.
You know, we talk about taking a hypothesis, and over the last 15 years, you've actually taken it from, you know, we call it molecule to man or hypothesis to man, and you've done over 64 surgeries now at this point. And it's pretty amazing to be able to take that. I call you the Elon Musk of cardiac regenerative medicine, because
okay, I think there's a little bit of difference in our salaries, but besides that,
well,
I appreciate it.
You know, we say be so good that they have to make up new terms and terminology and names. And you know, never before have we even had cardiac regenerative therapy. And you're there now. I mean, you and your team have done some wonderful things. So super excited. But your researchers, you guys look at so many different aspects. I mean, I remember in San Sebastian, Spain 5 years ago, your team was called the Toll-like receptor 3 group. Like, you guys were the ones that figured that out. And so let's really just kind of get into the whole, you know, last time we spoke, you had a saying, you said healing has an endpoint. Can you explain that?
Yes, I like to compare tissue regeneration in general with wound healing, because there are many similarities. And wound healing has some cellular and molecular processes behind, which are true in other tissues as well. And as everyone knows, when you have a wound and it heals, at a certain point it is healed and the process of wound healing is over. And the same is true for tissue regeneration upon shockwave therapy. It takes some time. What we do with shockwaves is we initiate this endogenous process, then it takes some time until it is completed, and then the regeneration is done. That's the reason why we don't need too many repetitive applications.
Yeah, you know, and I saw with the wound therapy and some of the studies, you know, once a week for 6 weeks was just as good as twice a week for 6 weeks. And, you know, obviously when someone has a wound, it's tough for them to to get around and ambulate. So the less is better, but there was no real significant difference between 1 and 2 sessions per week. I thought that was cool.
Yes, that's cool, but I think that's quite depending on the type of pathology you treat. So the total amount of energy that you deliver to the tissue is dependent on is there an infection in the wound as well? You know, how large is the wound? What is the comorbidity profile of the patient? So this is quite an I would like to call it a very individual treatment. I think shockwave do work if you use them according to a predefined scheme, but I would really appreciate more to use them like personalized, a tool of personalized medicine. So treat every single patient according to his or her individual needs.
That's a great, you know, there's no cookie cutter. We can have a template.
Absolutely, yes.
Healing takes time. We always say that. Maybe one of the most unbelievable parts of shockwave is that it helps open up those blood vessels. You get that vasodilation, and you talk about all these healing cells and immune cells that come in, as well as that modulation of inflammation. There's like that smart modulation period. If you want to chat a little bit about that, because you've obviously done so much great research with it, and toll-like receptor 3, which is part of our early immune responders, right? Tell how it kind of activates our innate immune system.
Yes, that's one of the amazing parts of this in general totally amazing story. In the early beginning of our research, we saw that we can induce angiogenesis, so new vessel formation, and that there are different types of mechanisms involved in that. But for quite some years, we only always described effects, which means we saw enzymes, cytokines, so inflammatory molecules modulated over time. So some of them were upregulated, some downregulated. We saw new vessels and things like that, but we weren't able to explain how this works. And the important question with shockwave therapy is the question of mechanotransduction. We know that shockwaves are sound pressure waves. So this is a mechanical stimulus to the tissue. And somehow this mechanical stimulus needs to be translated into a biological response. And what we found is that there are some microvesicles getting released from different types of cells, but mainly endothelial cells. And when when digging deeper, we found that those microvesicles, we call them exosomes, are carrying different molecules that are able to stimulate one of the immune receptors, which is, as you already mentioned, toll-like receptor 3. And the story about toll-like receptor 3 is that toll-like receptor 3 is part of the innate immune system, which is important to understand because this is the part of the immune system that every baby already has immediately after birth. And we know that newborns are able to regenerate much better than, to generate what adults are not anymore able to do. So we really stimulate the part of the immune system that is prone to, I would call it, embryogenic regeneration. And we were able to prove that quite well in different research works and papers. So this is all many times repeated. We were able to prove that in toll-like receptor 3 knockout animals, so meaning animals that do not have this receptor anymore, the effect of shockwave therapy is completely abolished. So we can really say today, shockwave effects are toll-like receptor 3 dependent. And this is what is really I would say spectacular about this story. Shockwaves do stimulate the innate immune system for self-regeneration. We do stimulate the endogenous regenerative capacity of our organism, and this is also an explanation for me why we don't cause any side effects, or let's say any relevant side effects, because we don't deliver anything foreign, like any wound dressing, or in the case of cell therapy, we do not inject any cells and so on, but we stimulate an endogenous mechanism.
Yeah, and I was really impressed with your team, because you guys went so far as creating an antagonist to block toll-like receptor 3 in certain mice. And we saw that the healing was not relevant. It didn't, those mice did not heal as well. Then your team went so far with genetic engineering, taking a CRISPR scissor and literally cutting out that toll-like receptor from the double helix, correct?
Yes, that's true.
And then those mice, again, didn't have those 4 or 5 key components to healing. Can you talk about some of the guys on your team that did that? Can you give a little shout out to them?
Yes, I mean, my team is amazing. I'm very gifted or happy, and that I've been able to find amazing young people who share my vision, and this really is the reason why they do such hard work over years. They have a vision together, and we want to change regenerative medicine, and we are about to do it because we found out that stimulating the innate immune system really causes regeneration. Today we have invented a new term that we are already using. We call it mechanoflammation, because this mechanotransduction, or the mechanical stimulus, induces or modulates inflammation. We see different types of cytokines and enzymes released over time. Some of them do suppress, and some of them do increase inflammation. At the very beginning, it's an increase of the inflammation. We need inflammation for healing, because inflammation means widening of the blood vessels, means that there are more blood and more immune cells delivered, let's say, to the wound margin or any other type of harmed tissue. So we need it in the beginning, but then we need to suppress it at a certain time point, and this is what we call the modulation. This type of modulation has two peaks. Different cell types are migrating to the tissue at different time points, and we can really see that it is possible to stimulate this whole effect with shockwave therapy.
Yeah, you talked about mechanotransduction, and that's really a key term that we're trying to teach all of our providers out there. It's that those supersonic sound waves that are compressing the cell membrane by 2%, then expanding by 10%, and that shearing force is what really kind of stimulates those microvesicles and exosomes, which are precursors to the stem cells and repair cells. And it's almost like it tricks the body into thinking there's a new injury. And again, we're not just a device company or technology. We're really, we're helping turn on that switch of cellular communication. And the body is like, your first responders in that innate immune system are they're coming like, what happened? What's going on? And they're coming to really assess the damage. The thing you said to me, I love the term mechanoinflammation. I thought that literally, at least working with general pain and in the orthopedic and chiropractic world, I felt like it was 90% reduction of inflammation, and then maybe 10% increase in inflammation. You corrected me on that. Kind of explain that. You feel it's a...
Yes, I think it's really balanced between these two. So I would say it's 50% increase and 50% suppression. So inflammation, we have to be aware that inflammation in general is not only bad. I mean, if we talk about inflammation in everyday clinical practice, always if something is inflamed, the wound, the limb, whatever is inflamed, this is bad and it's a pathologic situation. But inflammation is part of every healing process. We need inflammation to induce the healing process. I cannot give correct numbers, but I would estimate that it's about 50-50 between suppression and increase.
Yes,
these two are a balanced couple.
And the thing that I love, I mean, you basically say we stimulate self-healing, right? Without taking anything external, without injecting cortisone, without putting a drug into the system, without putting antibacterial on the wound. Can you go into depth a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I think the secret really is that we are somehow mimicking damage. We do not cause damage. This is often misunderstanding. Many think that with shockwaves we call like micro injury and thereby induce the healing process. But we definitely don't harm any cell. We've seen that in numerous electron microscopy studies in cells. You can treat cells with quite high energy, and we can look on them under the electron microscope, and there is no damage. But what happens is cells, they are not a rigid thing. They have a liquid membrane outside, and from this liquid membrane you can shed off small bubbles, like you would shed off a water drop from the water surface. So we can shed off a small bubble without harming the cell integrity or without harming the cell membrane. But this small bubble, or the correct name would be a vesicle, and even more defined exosome, will stimulate the immune receptor of the neighboring cell, and the neighboring cell is getting the signal there is some damage in starting the whole process. So thereby we are mimicking cell damage without causing it in reality, and the body starts all the healing mechanisms that are for different reasons suppressed in the pathologic situation.
Yeah, it's almost like a reboot, and that healing process, that regenerative healing process over the next 10 to 12 weeks can occur again, which I think.
Yes, absolutely. I think it's correct to call it a reboot.
Yeah. So super excited because you're now seeing you've been able to do this treatment on 64 bypass patients, and it's stable, right? You're seeing some long-term great benefits. I think over 10% in left ventricular ejection improvements, which we've never seen before. And is it true that during your trials that they said, hey, it's kind of unethical not to offer this to everyone? So you got rid of the control group. Can you explain that?
Yes, that's correct, Matt. So what we performed here at my center, which is the University Clinic of Cardiac Surgery in Innsbruck, Austria, we performed a randomized controlled trial in patients suffering from ischemic heart failure. So they have a reduced heart function after several myocardial infarction. They needed to undergo bypass surgery, and we randomized them into a treatment group which received shockwave therapy directly on the heart during bypass operation, and the control group that received the sham treatment. And the primary outcome parameter, of course, was the improvement of the left ventricular ejection fraction, so the overall improvement of the heart function after 1 year, as measured in cardiac MRI, which is the state of the art measurement. And although I cannot give you exact results today because they are not published, I can tell you that the results were so amazing. They were more than 10 percentage points increase in the ejection fraction, which is twice as much as we have ever seen with stem cell therapy. And the results were that good that our ethics board called us to stop recruiting patients because it would be unethical to do the randomization into a treatment or a control group anymore. That's the best thing that could happen to you if you perform such a randomized control trial. We are now very hard working on getting all the data of our patients together, and I hope we will be able to publish this amazing study in a high-ranked journal quite soon. At least I would say in summer, and we'll also present it at a major meeting, and then they are public, and I hope we will be able to discuss about the details, about more detail then.
Yeah, well, hopefully you'll come back to Softwave University and give us some updates every 6 months or so. Yeah, really kudos to your team for that's just an amazing accomplishment. And we hope to have this in the States in the next year or so, correct? You're finding some
yes,
partners?
of course. Yes, of course. I mean, of course, our main aim is to bring this to patients and to bring it to as many patients as possible. With these data we have so far, we are able to get European approval. CE, we call it CE mark approval from the European authorities for this new cardio shockwave device. And of course, the next step, and this is important because Northern America is about 40% of the worldwide medtech market. So we definitely want to make the step towards the US. We plan to perform a multi-center trial in the US, and we are also already in contact with the FDA, negotiating on the study protocol, the number of patients, and what they really expect from us to get FDA approval then. And I'm looking forward to start this still this year, and hope that we'll be able to treat as many US patients as possible soon, and to even get it to the market, to make it available to all the patients who may profit from this new therapy. One more word. I really believe, and that this is what keeps me going, although it's really hard work, and we also have many high obstacles to overcome. It's not so easy to go through all this approval process. But what really keeps me going is that I'm convinced that this is groundbreaking in medical, in heart medicine in general, and this will call a paradigm shift in heart regeneration. This, for me personally, I really believe this is a historical moment in medicine, although we will only recognize it years later. But this is a historical moment today.
We have to understand that ischemic heart disease is still the leading cause of death worldwide. And
yes, it's more aggressive than most types of cancer.
You know, and you know, the current health failure system is, you know, my dad passed away from congestive heart failure after a heart attack at 58. And I saw 13 years of that progression, what happens. And it's, you know, basically the heart is not strong enough to pump oxygenated blood to all the distal aspects and organs of the body. And it's a slow death process. And currently, the best thing we could do is slow that progression. But now there are hopes on the horizon that we can actually make an impact and make a change. So
yes, today we can only stop the progression of the disease to some extent. But in future, with shockwave therapy on a clinical routine basis, we'll be able to improve it even, So
Yeah,
that's a huge advancement,
therapies
for the
are only
speeches.
palliative in nature. And I remember
Mhm,
when I was
mhm.
in chiropractic college 30 years ago, and I'd go to my dad's cardiac visits, and I'd be asking him about like the medications and the things like that. And I remember he put his hand up in front of me and said, your dad will die, and some of them are going to be from the side effects of the drugs and how they toxify the organs. So again, I want to reiterate, we're taking nothing from the outside, nothing external, and putting it in the body at this point other than these sound waves.
Other than energy, yes.
Yeah, and it's intelligent energy. I loved your interview with the DeBanke Heart Center last August or July, I forget.
Yeah,
But
thank you.
that lead researcher, the gentleman, he said, "Do you think it's okay to put this mechanostimulation into a heart after it's had a heart attack?" And I loved what you said. You kind of touched on a little bit. It was an eye opener for so many doctors that there's no damage done to the tissue, because so many people think shockwave, that radial device, which does cause trauma and works on a superficial, you would never place that on the heart. You're using true, like genuine lithotripsy that is electrohydraulic in nature, right?
Exactly. We only use the electrohydraulic technology, and I can tell you, I used or I tested many different devices from different companies in my lab in different settings, and we really saw that electrohydraulic is the most effective technology for shockwave therapy. And by the way, the gentleman you mentioned in the interview was Professor John Cook from the Houston Methodist Hospital Research Center. He's one of the really big shots in the US. He came from Harvard, was many years in Stanford, and is one of the greatest cardiovascular scientists I know. And he's very excited about shockwave therapy today. He has one of our devices in his lab in Houston, and they have amazing results in their research lab. So he's one of our most important collaboration partners today, and will therefore, of course, be pretty much involved. At the moment, we will be able to start a clinical trial in the United States.
We're going to wrap this up because I want to respect your time. Not only is he a full-time cardiac surgeon and probably a full-time researcher, but he has two twins at home. And how do you have to balance all that? Do you sleep? Because I know Elon Musk only sleeps 3 or 4 hours a night, which I don't recommend.
Yeah, one aspect definitely is also that I'm not sleeping enough. But one other is that I'm living literally across the street from the hospital. So I really don't lose any time on my way to work. And I will go home in, let's say, about 2 hours to have dinner with my family. And as soon as the kids are in bed, I'm going back, and sometimes to the clinic, sometimes into the research lab. Sometimes I have meetings with my team. So it's really working all around the clock, and also, of course, during weekends. But living close to the hospital gives me this opportunity to still have fulfilling family life.
Yeah, you need balance. I think one of the coolest things is some of your researchers, we always say that electrohydraulically produced sound waves are so versatile, right? We see it with trauma surgeons, we see it with cardiologists, orthopedists, chiropractors. You guys were also working on a spinal cord regeneration model as well. I didn't realize this, but during cardiac surgery, there's a high risk of spinal cord ischemia, correct?
Yeah, I mean, those are very rare cases.
Okay.
In very rare cases, after aortic dissection or during major aortic surgery, it can happen. that the spinal cord suffers from ischemia because the blood vessels that supply the spinal cord origin from the aorta. And sometimes this can happen. And these are devastating cases because the patients are then in paraplegia. They have to lead the rest of their life in a wheelchair. And we had one of those cases and thought, okay, this is ischemia. It's a different tissue, but still it's ischemia. Let's try it. And we tried shockwave therapy in a spinal cord in this single patient. Although we haven't had so impressive effects then, we thought that this still could be an interesting option and started to perform basic research on it, and did several animal experiments and found out that we can even regenerate ischemic spinal cord tissue. Not to a total extent, but to some extent, and this still causes relevant improvement for those patients. And when having seen those effects, as a next step, we of course been interested in the question whether we can also have an effect on traumatic spinal cord injury, which is the more frequent type of spinal cord injury. We performed another study on that, and these data are already published, so we can literally make paraplegic mice walk again. I don't expect those effects in humans. We've treated 10 humans so far. I don't expect this the result that we can make them walk again, but even if such a patient gets some I would say some sensation back some sensation anyways in his lower limbs or anything like that. This is already a major improvement in the patient's quality of life. So we're working on that. This is quite a new field, a very difficult and challenging field. But we're working on that, and I'm optimistic that we will have good improvements within the next years in this field as well.
Well, listen, thank you for putting together a wonderful team. It's who, not why. I always say it's like putting the right people on the bus to help you get to the level you need to, and you are definitely a man on a mission. And you're driven.
Thank you. By the way, while talking about my team, I cannot name all of them, but please visit our website, our laboratory website. We call ourselves Care Lab. Care stands for cardiac regeneration. carelab.at.
Perfect.
This is our website, and you can see the whole team and descriptions of our research there.
I'll put a link to that in the body of this. Dr. Holfeld, really a pleasure.
Thank you.
I look forward to seeing you in Prague and in September. I hope you'll be there.
Yes, I'll be there. Although only for one day. I have a tight schedule, but I'm looking forward to see you again, Matt. Mm-hmm. I'm happy. Thank you for having me on this show. I hope it was interesting for your audience, what I was telling, and hopefully we can give an update in a couple of months.
Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your day, and I appreciate you taking out this time.
Thank you. See you soon, Matt. Goodbye.
All right.